The golden dismissal. Julian Mercer adjusted his burgundy silk tie as he surveyed the crowded gallery. At 32, he'd become fashion's golden boy, his designs adorning celebrities and socialites across 3 continents. Tonight's charity auction was exactly the type of event where connections were made and deals sealed, polished people drinking polished champagne in a polished world. "Mr. Mercer, would you mind stepping this way?" A woman with a professional camera gestured toward the gallery's dramatic staircase. "I'm documenting the event for the foundation." Julian noticed her immediately, not for any flash or glamour, but for her striking absence of it. In a room where everyone screamed for attention, she was quietly compelling. Chestnut hair pulled back in a simple knot, minimal makeup highlighting natural features, and clothes that were quality but understated. Her eyes, though, deep amber with flecks of gold, held an intelligence that intrigued him. "Of course," he said, following her direction. "Though I typically approve photographers before they shoot me." She adjusted her lens without looking up. "The foundation hired me. I'm just doing my job. No gushing, no flirtation. Refreshing." "And you are?" he asked. "Olivia Reed," she replied, finally meeting his gaze. "I normally shoot landscapes, but tonight I'm capturing self-important people instead." A hint of a smile played at her lips. Julian laughed, genuinely surprised. "Touché, Miss Reed." That first encounter led to coffee after the event, which led to dinner the following week. Olivia was unlike anyone in Julian's social circle, grounded, authentic, passionate about her art rather than her connections. Her small photography studio focused on nature and architecture, though she confessed her true passion was capturing everyday moments of human connection. "Beauty exists without designer labels," she told him one evening, showing him a striking image of weathered hands passing bread across a table. "This has more truth than any fashion spread I've ever seen." Julian found himself drawn to her unpretentious perspective, even as he recognized the fundamental divide between them. Olivia represented everything his world wasn't: genuine, unpolished, content with simplicity. For 8 weeks, he indulged in the novelty of her company, introducing her to his world of exclusive parties and influential people. She attended, observant but never quite fitting in. At a launch party for his spring collection, he overheard his business partner Dominic whisper, "Charming little project you found, but hardly the partner for someone building a global brand." The comment gnawed at Julian. His mentor had always emphasized image as everything in fashion. "Your personal brand must be as curated as your collection," she'd insisted. And Olivia, with her sensible shoes and lack of social ambition, increasingly felt like a liability to the empire he was building. The inevitable end came on a rainy Tuesday. They sat in his penthouse overlooking the glittering city, Olivia showing him photographs from her weekend, visiting her grandmother in the countryside. "I've been thinking," Julian interrupted, setting down his crystal tumbler. "We should talk about where this is going." Olivia lowered her camera. "Okay. You're wonderful, Olivia. Truly. But I'm expanding to Paris next month, then Milan. I need someone who understands that world, who elevates my brand rather than—" He gestured vaguely. "Rather than what?" she asked quietly. "You're too ordinary for the life I'm building," he said, the words cutting even as he spoke them. "You belong in those small, quiet moments you photograph. I need someone who shines in the spotlight." Olivia sat very still, her expression shifting almost imperceptibly from hurt to resignation. She carefully packed her camera, rose, and looked at him one last time. "Ordinary isn't the insult you think it is, Julian. I hope you find what you're looking for in those spotlights." She slipped on her coat and walked out. No dramatics. No tearful pleas. Just a dignified exit that somehow made him feel smaller than any screaming match would have. Julian told himself it was the right decision as he deleted her number. His trajectory was upward, toward greater fame and fortune. He couldn't afford anchors, no matter how intriguing they might be. Scattered reflections. The 5 years following Olivia's departure from Julian's life unfolded like a fevered dream of success. His fashion house, Mercer Luxe, expanded across Europe and Asia with boutiques in 12 major cities. Celebrities clamored to wear his designs on red carpets, and his signature aesthetic, bold architectural silhouettes with unexpected details, became instantly recognizable in the industry. Julian's personal brand grew equally magnificent. He traded his downtown penthouse for a restored chateau outside Paris, collected vintage cars, and dated a string of models and socialites who complemented his image perfectly. His most recent companion, Valentina Russo, Italian heiress and former runway model, adorned his arm at every significant event, her calculated beauty the perfect accessory to his cultivated persona. "We're fashion royalty, darling," Valentina purred one evening as they prepared for the Met Gala, her diamond choker catching the light. "Everyone wants what we have." Julian nodded absently, adjusting his custom tuxedo. The statement should have pleased him, yet lately a strange hollowness had begun to echo beneath his achievements. The faces at parties blurred together, conversations recycled the same shallow topics, and even his creative work felt increasingly derivative, beautiful, but somehow empty. Then came the fall, as sudden as it was spectacular. It began with whispers about production practices in Julian's Malaysian factory, allegations of labor exploitation and dangerous working conditions. Julian had delegated those operations to Dominic years ago, focusing instead on design and publicity. When journalists began investigating, they uncovered a systematic cover-up of workplace violations that Dominic had orchestrated while Julian remained willfully ignorant. "I trusted you to handle this ethically," Julian confronted Dominic in their London office. Dominic shrugged. "You trusted me to maintain your profit margins. Don't pretend you ever asked questions about how I did it." The scandal erupted across fashion media. Major retailers pulled Mercer Luxe collections from their stores. Celebrities distanced themselves, former champions becoming vocal critics. Julian's failure to adequately address the violations, his fumbling press conference where he claimed ignorance rather than accepting responsibility, only accelerated the downfall. Then came the financial revelations. Dominic had been embezzling for years, hiding losses and fabricating profits. The empire Julian had built was largely smoke and mirrors, teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. When authorities began investigating, Dominic disappeared overnight, leaving Julian to face the consequences alone. "I can't be associated with this," Valentina informed him over the phone, not even bothering with an in-person goodbye. "My family has its own reputation to consider." By month's end, Julian had lost everything. The chateau, the cars, the adoring public, all gone. His remaining assets frozen during investigation, his reputation in tatters, he retreated to the only place left, a small apartment in his modest hometown that he'd kept as an investment property and rarely visited. Halfway across the country, Olivia Reed's life had taken a different trajectory. After walking away from Julian, she had thrown herself into her photography with renewed purpose. Her studio expanded from landscapes to intimate documentary projects, capturing ordinary lives with extraordinary sensitivity. A gallery showing led to critical recognition, then a book deal featuring her work photographing healthcare workers and their patients. "Your eye for human dignity is remarkable," her publisher had told her. "You make viewers care about people they've never met." The greatest change in Olivia's life, however, arrived unexpectedly 9 months after leaving Julian. Her daughter, Sophia, was born with Julian's striking blue-gray eyes and determined chin, though Olivia never reached out to inform him of her existence. She had watched his meteoric rise from afar, occasionally seeing his face in magazines or online articles, each time feeling a complicated mixture of lingering hurt and gratitude for the path her life had taken instead. Sophia grew into a thoughtful 4-year-old with an artistic temperament and infectious laugh. Together, they built a life centered around Olivia's growing photography business and the community she'd cultivated in Westbrook, the small city where she'd relocated for its art scene and quality of life. When Olivia accepted a position documenting patient recovery stories at Westbrook Rehabilitation Center, she had no idea that the universe was orchestrating an impossible reunion. She certainly never expected to see Julian Mercer's name on the admission roster after he suffered a stress-induced collapse that left him temporarily unable to walk, broken in body as thoroughly as in reputation. Life had scattered them like seeds in a windstorm, only to plant them improbably in the same soil once again. Unexpected caretaker Julian stared at the institutional beige walls of Westbrook Rehabilitation Center with undisguised contempt. 3 weeks had passed since his collapse, diagnosed as severe exhaustion complicated by malnutrition and anxiety that had triggered a temporary neurological condition affecting his mobility. His doctor had prescribed complete rest and physical therapy at this facility, far from the stress of his imploding former life. "Mr. Mercer, it's time for your physical therapy evaluation," announced a nurse with irritating cheerfulness. Julian didn't respond, keeping his gaze fixed on the window. Rain streaked the glass, mirroring how he felt, smeared, distorted, unrecognizable even to himself. His body, once perfectly maintained through personal trainers and nutritionists, now betrayed him. His legs trembled with weakness, his hands occasionally seized with tremors. "Mr. Mercer?" the nurse persisted. "I heard you," he snapped. "Forgive me if I'm not enthusiastic about being paraded around in hospital pajamas," the nurse sighed. "The rehabilitation director will be documenting your progress as part of our patient recovery program. It helps with funding and fantastic. I'm a charity case for your promotional materials." Julian bitterly wheeled himself toward the door, refusing assistance. The rehabilitation gym was mercifully empty except for equipment and a few staff members. Julian's therapist, Dr. Patterson, greeted him with professional detachment, already accustomed to his difficult attitude. As they began the evaluation, Julian noticed a woman photographing another patient's session across the room. Something about her silhouette triggered a distant memory. The way she crouched slightly, angling for the perfect shot, speaking softly to put her subject at ease. When she turned, Julian felt the floor shift beneath his wheelchair. Olivia Reed, older, more confident, but unmistakably the woman he'd dismissed years ago. She hadn't noticed him yet, focused on her work. Julian quickly turned away, pulse racing with an emotion he couldn't name. Shame, perhaps, or fear of recognition. He fumbled through his exercises, distracted by her presence, until inevitably their paths converged. "This is Olivia Reed, our documentation specialist," Dr. Patterson introduced her. "She'll be photographing your recovery journey. With your consent, of course." Olivia's expression shifted subtly as recognition dawned. Surprise. Then something unreadable settling into professional composure. "Mr. Mercer?" she acknowledged with a slight nod. "I believe we've met before." Julian swallowed hard. "Yes, it's been some time." 5 years, 3 months, she replied evenly, neither accusatory nor emotional, simply factual. Dr. Patterson looked between them. "You know each other?" "Briefly," Olivia said, her camera lowered. "I'm happy to request another photographer if Mr. Mercer would prefer." Julian found himself shaking his head. "No, that's unnecessary." The session continued with excruciating awkwardness. Julian struggled through basic movements, hyper-aware of Olivia documenting his weakness, his fall from grace captured by the very woman he'd deemed unworthy of his ascent. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. Later that afternoon, as Julian sat alone in the center's garden area, Olivia approached with purposeful steps. "We should address the elephant in the room," she said directly, sitting across from him. "I won't compromise your care with personal history." Julian studied her. The years had added subtle confidence to her bearing, a certainty absent in the woman he'd known. Her style remained understated, but more defined. Quality clothing chosen for meaning rather than labels. "I appreciate your professionalism," he managed. "I wouldn't have expected to find you here." "Life takes unexpected turns," she replied. Then, after a pause, "There's something else you should know." Before she could continue, a staff member appeared with a small girl in tow. The child, around 4 or 5, had escaped from the center's daycare program and was looking for her mother. "Mommy! I drew a picture for your office." The girl bounded toward Olivia, then stopped short at the sight of Julian. Julian felt the air leave his lungs. The child had his eyes, unmistakably, undeniably his eyes, staring back at him with innocent curiosity. "Sophia," Olivia said gently. "This is Mr. Mercer, one of our new patients. Mr. Mercer, this is my daughter, Sophia." Julian gripped his wheelchair arms, his world tilting on its axis. "Your daughter," he repeated numbly. "Yes," Olivia confirmed, her hand protectively on Sophia's shoulder. "My daughter." In that moment, surrounded by the ruins of his former life, Julian faced the most profound consequence of his arrogance, a child he'd never known, born to the woman he'd carelessly discarded. Part 4. Rediscovering Worth. "Why didn't you tell me?" Julian's question hung in the air between them, weighted with 5 years of absence. They sat in a quiet corner of the rehabilitation center's cafeteria 2 days after their initial reunion. Sophia was at school, leaving them this fragile pocket of privacy amid the bustle of institutional routine. Olivia stirred her tea methodically. "At first, I was still processing your rejection. By the time I discovered I was pregnant, you were opening your Paris boutique with Dominic and that Brazilian supermodel on your arm." She looked up, her gaze direct. "You made it abundantly clear I wasn't part of the life you wanted. I didn't see how a child would change that equation." Julian flinched at the truth in her words. "I had a right to know." "Perhaps," she conceded. But Sophia had a right to a parent who valued her existence, not someone who saw her mother as too ordinary to keep around. The words carried no venom, just a calm statement of fact that cut deeper than anger would have. Julian's hand trembled slightly as he reached for his water. The tremors had been improving with therapy, but emotional stress still triggered them. "I want to know her." "That's not a simple request," Olivia replied carefully. "Sophia has a stable, happy life. You're here for rehabilitation, then what? Back to whatever remains of your former world. Children need consistency, Julian, not novelty father figures who disappear when something more exciting comes along." The assessment stung precisely because he couldn't refute it. What did he have to offer a child? His name was toxic in the industry, his finances in shambles, his physical health compromised. The golden life he'd chosen over Olivia had crumbled to dust. "I understand," he said quietly. "I haven't earned any place in her life." Something in his acceptance must have softened Olivia's resolve. "Start by focusing on your recovery. We can revisit this conversation when you're stronger." She paused. Sophia knows her father was a designer who wasn't ready for family life. She's not lacking love or stability. The rehabilitation process became Julian's anchor in the weeks that followed. Physical therapy gradually restored strength to his legs, occupational therapy helped steady his hands, and regular meals restored health to his depleted body. Throughout it all, Olivia maintained professional distance, photographing his sessions with the same compassionate attention she gave all patients. Slowly, Julian found himself noticing the world Olivia had built, how staff respected her artistic eye, how patients opened up to her gentle direction. He watched her with Sophia during the occasions the girl visited the center after school, witnessing the thoughtful parenting that had shaped a curious, kind child. "Ms. Reed showed me how to make a fort in the physical therapy room with all the cushions," an elderly stroke patient told Julian during a shared therapy session. "Then she photographed me in it with my grandchildren. Made me feel like a kid again instead of a broken old man." Similar stories emerged everywhere. Olivia had created photographs that helped a young accident victim see beauty in her scars. She'd documented a veteran's recovery journey in images that helped him reconcile with estranged family members. Her ordinary perspective that Julian had once dismissed now revealed itself as an extraordinary gift, the ability to see value in people's society often overlooked. One rainy afternoon, Julian found himself alone in the center's small library with Sophia, who had planted herself at his table with a drawing pad while waiting for Olivia to finish with a patient. "My mom says you make clothes," Sophia stated, focused on her colorful scribbles. Julian nodded cautiously. "I used to. I'm taking a break now. Mom says breaks are important for creativity," Sophia replied with childish wisdom. "She takes thinking walks when she gets stuck with her pictures." Julian found himself smiling. "That sounds like good advice." "You have eyes like mine," Sophia observed suddenly, looking up at him. "Mom says I got them from my dad." Julian's heart stuttered. Your mom is very observant." In that unguarded moment with a child who carried his DNA but none of his damage, Julian confronted the emptiness of the values that had guided his life. What had his pursuit of status and admiration brought him compared to what Olivia had built? Her ordinary life was rich with meaning, connection, and purpose. His extraordinary one had been a gilded cage, beautiful but ultimately hollow. For the first time, Julian began to see himself through clear eyes and recognized how much work remained before he could become someone worthy of the second chance fate had unexpectedly offered. Mended frames. 6 months after entering Westbrook Rehabilitation Center, Julian walked out on his own strength. His physical recovery had progressed well beyond expectations, though occasional tremors still affected his hands when he was tired or stressed. The neurologist assured him these would likely fade with time and continued therapy. His emotional and spiritual recovery, however, remained an ongoing journey. During his rehabilitation, Julian had begun working with a therapist who specialized in identity crises and life transitions. Together, they unpacked the values that had led to his rise and fall, his desperate need for validation, his equation of worth with public acclaim, his fear of being ordinary. The irony, Julian told Dr. Wilson during their final session, is that chasing extraordinariness made me into the most predictable cliché, another egotistical creative who sacrificed integrity for success. Julian had rented a modest apartment in Westbrook, unwilling to leave the community where Sophia lived. His relationship with his daughter had evolved gradually, beginning with supervised visits at the center and eventually progressing to weekend outings approved by Olivia. They were building a tentative father-daughter bond, one story and shared experience at a time. His relationship with Olivia remained more complicated. Professional respect had thawed into cautious friendship, but the wounds of the past required more than apologies to heal completely. Julian understood her hesitation. He was still proving his transformation was genuine and lasting. Finding purpose in his new life had been challenging. His name remained controversial in fashion circles, though the worst of the scandal had faded as new industry dramas took center stage. With his design skills still intact but his former business model repugnant to him, Julian sought a different path forward. Inspiration came unexpectedly during a community art therapy workshop where Julian had volunteered. A young participant, a teenager recovering from severe injuries after a car accident, expressed frustration over clothing, options that accommodated her medical devices, while still allowing her to express her personal style. "I feel like I have to choose between comfort and identity," she complained, struggling to sketch clothing adaptations. Julian found himself offering suggestions, then sketching possibilities that incorporated her needs without sacrificing aesthetics. Other participants gathered around, each sharing their own challenges with standard clothing during recovery or with chronic conditions. That evening, Julian presented a proposal to Olivia over coffee at her kitchen table, after Sophia had gone to bed. "Adaptive fashion with genuine style," he explained, showing her sketches of garments designed to accommodate various medical and mobility needs. Not hospital-looking clothes that scream patient, but pieces that honor individuality while addressing practical concerns. Olivia studied the designs thoughtfully. "This combines your skills with actual purpose." "I'd want to do it ethically," Julian continued. "Local production, fair wages, transparent practices, small scale but meaningful." He hesitated. "I was hoping you might consider documenting the process, photographs showing the journey from concept to creation to how these clothes affect real people's lives." Olivia looked surprised. "You want me to collaborate with you?" "Your vision was always clearer than mine," Julian admitted. "You see people as they are, not as projections of status or image. That's exactly what this project needs." He paused. "What I need, if I'm honest." The partnership began tentatively, Julian designing prototypes, while Olivia photographed potential clients discussing their needs and challenges. They called the project Reconstructed, with the dual meaning of rebuilt garments and rebuilt lives. A small grant from a disability advocacy organization provided initial funding, allowing Julian to hire 2 local seamstresses and establish a modest studio. 1 year after beginning his rehabilitation, Julian stood beside Olivia at the opening of their joint exhibition. The gallery walls displayed Olivia's powerful photographs of people wearing Julian's adaptive designs, each image accompanied by stories of how appropriate clothing had restored dignity and self-expression to those who had felt invisible in their changed bodies. "It's beautiful," whispered Sophia, now 6, holding both their hands as they surveyed the crowded gallery. Daddy made the clothes and Mommy made the pictures, and together they made people happy. Julian exchanged a glance with Olivia over their daughter's head, finding in her amber eyes not the adoration he'd once craved from the world, but something infinitely more valuable: respect earned through consistent action rather than superficial charm. Later that evening, after Sophia had been tucked into bed at her mother's house, Julian and Olivia sat on her porch swing, sharing comfortable silence and the satisfaction of their successful exhibition. "I never thanked you," Julian said finally. "For what?" "For being exactly who you are," he replied. "For not changing to fit my shallow definition of extraordinary. For creating a life with real foundation while I was building castles in the air." He took a breath. "For giving Sophia roots and wings even without me." Olivia's expression softened in the porch light. "We're all ordinary in some ways and extraordinary in others. The trick is figuring out which parts matter." Julian nodded, thinking of how differently he now measured success. Not in magazine features or celebrity clients, but in Sophia's delighted smile when he picked her up from school, in the gratitude of clients who felt seen in his designs, in moments like this beside the woman whose quiet strength had ultimately saved him from himself. "I still don't fit perfectly into your world," he acknowledged, "but I'd like to keep trying if you'll let me." Olivia's hand found his in the gathering darkness. "I think there's a place for you here," she said simply. There always was. You just couldn't see it before. As stars appeared in the night sky above Westbrook, Julian finally understood that true extraordinariness wasn't found in spotlights or acclaim, but in the courage to embrace the beautiful ordinary, the daily acts of creation, connection and care that frame by frame composed a life of authentic meaning.